From here, we're going to go ahead and transition into knee strength. Um, Now, keeping in mind that other regions of the body, like we previously discussed, play an important role with how the knee operates and kind of responds to its environment. So making sure that foot strengthening is a big priority for folks. This was discussed in a prior video, making sure that we're thinking about foot integration with the ground, arch support, calf and soleus strengthening, and not just strengthening up and down, but strengthening in other directions as well. Um, Strength of the hips is going to play a super big important role for how the knees function and how they feel. That's going to be coming up in future videos. So if we're thinking about the knee specifically, we're going to be talking about quads and hamstrings. Before I get into what we're going to be practicing here, where someone can be working on this stuff at home or really any environment, I also want to preface this by machines at the gym, I think are super important as well. We're going to be talking about stuff where our foot is in the ground and we're doing like body weight control stuff, but also taking time once or twice a week to get on a leg extension machine and work the quad out in open chain, or switching it around and doing a hamstring curl machine for the back of the leg while the foot is out in the open. Both those things are also very important. I think they serve a different purpose, but they're important for building a different type of strength and control, and they're important for tissue health and integrity. And they're going to give us something a little bit different than always doing squats or deadlifts all the time. So we're going to take a look at some sit to stand variations. There's a couple different ways that we can be thinking about this. So if we start with a chair, kind of at our baseline, and we're just going to work on our feet being neutral, we have our big toe integrated with the ground, and then an additional piece on this to try and get our hips a little bit more engaged with what we're doing. We're going to imagine we're trying to spread the floor apart. Now our feet don't actually move, but it's that motion as if we're trying to pull our feet apart, and you should feel recruitment outsides of the legs and into the hips before you even start to move. Now we got that good grounding and stability foundation set. Now from here, we're just going to go ahead with a little bit of a lean forward and stand, and then nice and controlled on the way back down. So that speed up is going to be probably a little bit faster, and I want that speed or control back down to be more deliberate, a little bit slower. So we're thinking about strong and powerful explosion on the way up, and then nice and controlled on the way back down for a soft landing. Now, what we could be doing is keeping everything neutral. So if I have my feet equal spacing apart, equal spacing forwards and backwards, and I'm working on my sit to stands here, I could go all the way up, all the way down. I could transition, if I'm ready to do so, into chair taps, where I lightly touch the chair and then back up, so I'm in more control throughout the full motion. Or I can graduate myself forward and go with no chair, just out in the open, nice and controlled. Could be independently, could be holding onto a countertop. There's a lot of different steps in between depending on what your strength levels are. Now, the part that I really wanted to get to with this is we can start to vary this some. So for example, if we're compensating with a neutral stance squat or sit to stand, oftentimes we're not going to know it unless someone's pointing it out to us and watching our technique. So to try and help minimize the chances of biasing into one side or the other, we're going to take repetitions and deliberately train one side a little bit more directly, and then make sure we do the same thing for the opposite. So with our sit to stands, we can do that really easily. All we got to do is just take one foot slightly back, one foot slightly forward. So what I usually tend to think about is my back foot toes should be in line with the arch of my forward foot. So instead of being neutral, I just slide those things about a half a foot length, one forward, one backwards. So then they're kind of meeting each other half in the middle there. That back foot is going to be more of the driving leg. So as I go to stand, Now my split is going to be a little bit more like 60 or 65% on that back leg versus being 50-50 in a neutral stance. That back leg, the ankle may be lifted a little bit depending on what your ankle range of motion's like. That's okay. But making sure that we work on staggered squats to ensure that we're not avoiding a weaker side consistently. So I get my repetitions where my right side is more of the driver in this case, get my sets and reps, and then making sure that I also switch it up to where now my left side is going to be the driver, and I make sure that it gets its sets and reps to help make sure that I'm not avoiding it. Keeping in mind that those changes in our foot positioning, we can incorporate that whether it be a sit to stand, we can be doing that with our chair taps, or we can be doing it with our free squats. Whether we're up here or we're going down to pick something up, we can play with those foot positions to make sure that we're challenging one side over the other, and then making sure that we do switch that to get the opposite side as well. So now from here, we're going to go ahead and transition into more hamstring work. Now with our hamstring work, we're going to be working on more hip hinging. We're going to start with a double leg variation, and then we can transition into a single leg. So in short, this is kind of like a Romanian deadlift, where you'll see some people with heavier weights, nice and strong stance, going down towards the floor where they really hinge through the hips and pull through the hamstrings and the glutes with a straight back to then lift and move like so. What we're going to do is we're just going to use body weight, and then you can start by using something on the outside to support you, and then as you feel like your stability and your strength improves, you kind of start to move away from that external support. But if I'm using the back of a chair or a kitchen countertop to support myself, we're going to get into a neutral foot position. Just like we've talked about with the footwork, we want to find our neutral foot. The big toe is integrated with the ground, so we feel our arch space working. And then we're going to really focus on our hips being the movement piece, forwards and backwards. So if I'm using something to help support my balance, I'm going to hinge towards it. And as I come forward, I should feel my glutes and my hamstrings engaged. If I only feel it in my back, then we got to kind of recheck our technique. First thing, looking at making sure that you're kind of sticking your bottom back. That will kind of help initiate the hinging process. And then secondly, bringing our shoulders back, which will kind of help cinch everything up in the middle. So hopefully then drive us more through the hips, back and forth through here. So again, if I'm using external support, we're going to push back with the hips. My shoulder blades are back, and I'm bringing my head forward. And I feel a contraction or controlled motion through my hamstrings and my glutes. And then I stand back up nice and strong. Now we can play with this again with a staggered stance, just like our squats. So if I wanted to bring my right foot forward and be a little bit more right-sided dominant for this activity, all the same rules apply, except now that right foot's forward, I'm lighter on the left. I'm probably a good 70-75% pressure through the right. And then I'm going to go through that same motion where now I'm driving more of that challenge through the right back leg, right glutes, right hamstrings. My right foot is working a little bit more, and I can get my repetitions through here. Making sure that as I come forward, I'm kind of coming towards a 12 o'clock direction. I'm trying not to veer too much to one side or the other. And then we can make sure that we get the opposite side. Now, as you feel like your balance and stability, your strength is improving, then we can kind of start to migrate to no toe touch, to where it's single leg balance, neutral foot, big toe, and then we start to kind of go into a single leg deadlift variation. Once you start to advance towards these, I would really suggest using the cue of the leg that goes back. You're really trying to focus on reaching the wall behind you. So as I am loaded on my right side, I'm going to really focus on my left leg going back and then coming back as I stand up. The reason for that is it seems as though it kind of helps with cinching everything up, through the pelvis and into the low back to help minimize flexion through the spine. Elongation is going to help keep the spine more neutral and stable. So again, we emphasize the back of the leg, the glutes and the hamstrings, and not so much the low back. So we work through here. Reach, and then return. And then as you feel like you start to advance and getting away from external support, you can start to transition into a reach and a reach. Or once you want more load, a reach and a reach with dumbbells. A lot of ways you can start to advance that. But thinking about what are some safe ways that we can start working on quads and hamstrings at home. We can be working on our split stance squats. So we're kind of biasing into one leg at a time. We can start to work on split stance deadlift variations where we're working on hip hinging in the back part of the leg. So hopefully that gives you kind of some different ideas of safely working on those things, all while really trying to maintain a good neutral foot, a good pelvic alignment and neutral positioning there. All these things got to tie together. So your emphasis may be trying to focus on quads, but you're feeling your feet work, you're feeling your hips work, your core is probably recruited, all these good things working together in unison to help promote good quality movement. So now from here, we're going to go ahead and transition into the hips.